talngim oh you narawra wal balula lembalti karen el malak karang aramaka arangalage balwa
malul total mergid rogul loren setial guk momo kaim edel program mergid Berius Ice sel dat program mergid el tutawa wadwa say protecting Palau's reef ma monitoring and restoration effort gora wadwa sel gora sel sab aklela amaranda makarger belau idiregel gora monitor gora malmol molomes المرال مرمضات إذا رجل ملاسم القرى أولجي سيجل وكمان لم تمال المراند سيا قرى والدائرة مالواشيا هذا برشة عندي شغل المريغا سولار وقول أدلو رنسة البرنامج أدرسيا تقوبت سلسوس المرا بدون ما ركلاي ما بقول بلاو أبي ركلاي ما بيلو ما مسيل بلاو ما بريسيدنت ما فايس بريسيدنت ما رغول موتلين أيقال مدلا ورور أبلور بلاو malungil total mergid rogui gomal mesal mosuil guktunin ora setial program mergid al tutau malwaisha robang geger elang ngaringi IKELAU madan dibok tribal kasyo kartil IKELAU elang awal madala IKELAU tokora research department tra atial center gid ya dan aguk tartigel tedel researcher loror aguk under Aquarium alwaysado dolmol mo ba gumulo ay sa igel korawal update mga sel sticker competition el black announcing last el girel sel maral mel libu voyage expedition ra al sel tial PNMS adir gumol mol ngari matrigel ngal gara skur kira ngara kay el motuel bo asibil gora disana igel mostiger tir e gore submit أيجل أيجي الستيجر أبغى أسبوع الجيل تيجي البالاو إكسبيديشن تيال كلايبون هذا رانغلا أسمر المولموت سبتمبر 6 يا قوم قايلهم سودي الأسبوع أسميل متيجر سيل PICRC فيسبوك بيج ما أدري اللي قال قوم قايلهم سودي تيال ستيجر كومبيتيشن أبلا لودروك المرا ومسند البرينسيبورا قال بكت سكول سيل قوك تقول سيل Arts and Tide Calendar sa lorto bedringa sentira PICRC wasang malamol el marala sel el claibong adre ma tora awarding gire la sel calendar tial maral merak 2025 ya sel mo ngedel update sa dire kal ngani agora mo claibong adre el gire sel mangrove education campaign tiramo osig sel maskat sel gorawabol lolong alela tel tora akaburus mandire kal ngla asmret tel claibong adre el morana ga school rekrira sorry ndial rekrira ngal ga school el grade tira omura maldi mortigelong eim el mora onge with school asibil submit tay gigid el original drawing tir sel winning design siamo maskat tel mangrove campaign Diregal waseng ngarinya cash prize el gret tagi del skela maskat el mortial mangrove campaign ngarinya kot ongerum ma ongedel el ngug del mortigel got ongerum ongedei tagi del clay wadrang la asmerel molmut sel October 18 ya tirgel adra education agora refal mutla mo odurok la gigi drogul information en moragal school tirgel principal egal bekel school agegi dagel keldel update لقد ملمول مقدمور سيل شورجيد الألتو طاول سجيد الدارين تلي من غورا وإرا دو مؤلة غورا دي سوادرو أيش راسيا أربك هذا الأمر ممدين ديك دوغادي الموت القلاتك ما أيقال غرغير مامراند ترى مال كلول كلاروس كلارا أو تويريني كلارا ذا أو تويريني إذا رجل ما كلوا agar elel girel tial erangla blulade klo tutrel girela klara dab madirel gidar ad indi betoga Matoka korawal el telemal el sebelmo otomal legal garger mamranda ultimo kuni tiale dimral morbab klel de la dao climate change tial mangongot el telablulad este ahí de modo el telablulad se el valo o bolu ule en moria gel dulasen coral bleaching malmum gal dao magal maranda malako atora wa pollution adigal overfishing ma destructive fishing practice agel gora diagal dolo dao tretar o mangid ayya sebel mo ula agora termilet tel garger mamrande atara diregal wase ya esel matmal lagi del marand magarger gid en sebel wal bolu uleng mo o makasay sel klaro sel klangal rada buluture gal marand sel wase loss of biodiversity e diregal sel mo gora utaigal loss of aklela agabo gal kula bulu madamran de mo beotra roa amoklolo yun me melasra agal agabo bra bulu e diregal si silta mal matmal ro amran de ngabol gosong saigal el ngarrada bil gidarada uspe amo gosong seleng modiaga arwa kalel mablin se agwa di general discussion el al time trigal terul gestrigid waiger tilura earlier IKELAU mengetigai gagel tora research research department ya dana research Aquarium el al tutar mo o kora ada du lobentrir maigela guk mo ay sagil wate tele la tora urele la marand ya dalle la guk mo ay sagil wate tora tele la restoration ngase magrado ora olgi sagal lam tamal el gargir ma alwai se dil beritiang e bay guidia ulal maigela mol gora mo o ay seguida igel el lurolong tmokl okay yeah
so lang is ungil 2000 kamilro ko il tune in tal show so lang rate al sa ekal may mosadra babila research elang ak mo mosadra coral bleaching bulgul waset tal maranda namo belelew au ula wase talda namo limisil makayal di wa tal belu kita dito abdarablay namo kasib. So when the ocean gets hot, corals get stressed. And just like us, when we get hot and stressed, we're not in a good mood. So corals get stressed, and what happens is they get rid of that algae. So corals and algae have this relationship, bulgul was a symbiotic relationship, where the corals give these algae housing, so they can stay and live. And in return, the algae gives the coral energy. They convert the sunlight into energy and helps them grow and defend against different situations that might threaten them. But when the temperatures of the water get really hot, the corals get stressed, and basically they start kicking out this algae. And the algae is what gives the coral their color. So when they kick out this algae, the corals start to get white. So when you look at corals and they start to look paler than usual, you can see that they're in a stressful state. When you see white corals, it could be one of three things. It could be the crown of thorns. They like to eat corals. It could be disease, or it could be bleaching that might cause it. So that project or kamamra coral bleaching. So we know that in Palau we have this biannual cycle. Was saying every 2 years, till October, Tialdaba mo limisil makayald, and the corals are at a more vulnerable state of mass bleaching. So the LLRAC kita namo madangi was a gida the omester till October, because this is the year that we're expecting for high bleaching. But this is not just the issue for Palau. This is worldwide. There's an agency called NOAA, a National Oceanographic Atmospheric Agency, NOAA. And they have these satellites around the world that they monitor the global temperatures of the water and different conditions. And so we use that website looking at Palau to see how impactful they are. This website is really good because it can give you the current state of what it is today. It can give you a prediction of 4 to 8 weeks, 8 to 12 weeks, and we can anticipate when this bleaching might occur. So we're looking at October, but the problem was in July, we started to see this peak, this spike start to go up. So in July, research partnered with the University of Guam, Dr. Peter Hoke, and we got some sensors from them that measures light and temperature, and we were able to deploy them around Palau. So there's 15 sensors. We deployed all the way up north around Gasol, that's just before Kayal, and then all the way down to Peleliu. So these sensors, we've deployed them. We're going to go collect them in December, and we're able to capture real-time changes in the water and what the levels of Palau actually are. Because the website tra NOAA, it's an estimate and their prediction. So we want to know exactly how our corals are impacted and what conditions that they live in. So now that those sensors are out, we are on standby. And kita di omesertial website ra NOAA, omesertial DHW, which means degree heating week. And this is our indicator to show when we should be expecting it. We expect large bleaching to occur once that DHW passes 8. And I didn't check this morning, but yesterday when I checked, it was a 7.9. So we're right there. So we're kita di omesertial trend, and we're gonna wait for it to peak. And once that peaks, then we're going to go out and start doing surveys. So Child survey, we have 80 sites around Palau, all the way from up north down to Peleliu and Angar.
When you say up north, would that include Kayangan?
Yeah.
Okay.
Kayangan along.
Yep. All the way
and
to
all the way down, both on the east and the west side. And we look at two different depths. We look at what we call a shallow, which is about 3 meters or so. And then we look at a deep, which is anything past the 7 to 8 meters. And basically this helps us determine, is it just corals that are close to the surface that are getting impacted, or is the heat of the water coming all the way down to deeper, where it's usually colder down there? So that's our project that we're getting ready to do. We're monitoring the website. We're also relying on people's feedback when they go out to the field. When we went out to the field in end of July to go deploy the sensors, we didn't see much bleaching, so that's a good sign. We have heard some reports that there are some mild bleaching, but we've asked our friends who are avid divers, other aquarium, whenever you guys go out, I know that you guys report to us if you guys see bleaching in any of your sites. And so we take all of that into account. And then once we get to the peak of that bleaching or the water trend, the heating trend, then we'll deploy a full team. This 80 sites, we aim to get it done within 2 to 3 weeks. So it's a lot to happen. It's a full force effort. What happens is we go out and we collect these data. We're trying to collect them when we can see that they're bleached, because what happens is if the temperatures return to normal quickly, the corals can regain their algae. Open house, they can invite them back in. But if they remain bleached for a long time, they can die out because they're not getting the sufficient energy that they're used to. So that's just a little bit about our work that is upcoming. And then we're very thankful for the community that has called us and notified us of potential bleaching. And I know a lot of people go out to the Rock Islands on the weekends, and some of them are calling in and letting us know when they see stuff. So we really appreciate that effort from the community notifying us of this issue. And it's a good sign that people are aware of bleaching and know to keep an eye out of it. So thank you very much.
Okay, you start out by talking Palawan, and then all of a sudden you change to English. Let me just try to it's understandable. Let me just try to summarize what you've been saying for the sake of the old generation who might not really understand that. Ay galam ko lo siya kaldel to kasi bel tomal lamranda. Sige del bol magal da daw. Madirigel sel sugumong may gale ruso. Ay game tramal mala amranda. Rus mamgal del daw. What's to do with one? Ma rakt. Masel sugum gumora kargere masa amranda kora manglew. Entra gigi del to kasi bel dubo. Engel Rus as edel mer identifari le sum kom sab el marande emsa Rus ngar bitari ndia ka ngod ndia kal kel del la daw. Well ndia ka sem lo ka fila kel del la daw sem mal magalda. Ay anyway gigi da kel del to el sebel tomal la maranda. Ya ay galam mol gol wasia sel do mes sel ngaria site le dulu aseng noa. Ano ang gigi del lo ay galaw. Aladram rigel untebe la tora wa malidiul madaw. Ngari website til gagi da igala lo ay say agimos el website o mes les el website as el miskida gora wal 6 weeks. Elol mel sander madadra era el salmal mo malak amranda en el subdia se o ngrang ya amo malak amranda. Madire ngari guk muskida sebel mo trui ma erul sunday. Melat mo seguide ma gagi information en may egore omes egora wal ultura yegi da sei kame dongot mo kurgi dirgirel tial el clel de la dab el moral morwal mo bodo mo lowrol gire lo mes igal merendela abulwat el beise sei gidi ligira noa melang kagi de lo asesera lo mes sea noa sei sel kurba bel klal del seguid el ladra no amla au ai sin mo sel website tir maigela direk el wal ulturi au ase selbol 8 degrees ang mas akil de la dab Sige de amranda amalakwang malakwa. Indi sel sugu mengario segid en wal gora ngaria telen melang agida ay galal wasay mbek total gor omes segid el klel de la dab segid el website. Ya será lo mes ni el alto tau. Eli la tutau en 7.9 membulgula say agirel malakwa amaranda selbol 8 ya era lo mes seguida wa IKELAU etemlo mudengel wasetia lo bleaching amaral mabdul belaw mutululo lo bangela dai nga kala rakwam lo bangela hakasel period hukang klel mutolo maigel temperature loggers 80 some temperature loggers 15 temperature loggers me mot mountain mile al meleliwek rablur belaw. So the temperature loggers are staying there, and how often do you get the reading from the?
We're gonna download them once we retrieve them, so they just store in the sensor. I
get temperature logger lingilar way galal mal mom eral maleliwek rablur belaw. Adi mede el sel mol move to sel bol rectal urora survey etira mal me download. E possible lo masagid information as ngoy ngal buy lengam le start temral morbap. So lo mesagid information mo mudira sem la ora tetel tial klel de la da sea algo lo mu le loral mera tiagid do asen malakway gal marandre 8 past 8 agegi da gora da talo algo lulchada igal gel tial project tir seguidre la amral lurior ya IKELAU asen clo lurior mon ospera ngora luspera todo ase full team or full force why say sel sum da gora amrar agargel lo mesagal maranda en al magsal aden wal ge grem gutmuklo ya bol butol aden klom gutmukle klol basyo se del mang mil gol way segi de mga katian marmeng smak aktiregal agora mo umalas mlawrot lo bentira adra aquarium la say kada magarang et medesid mo se edong sutra IKELAU el girel segi del klol monitoring Can you just tell us a little bit about the importance of why we need to monitor corals?
Yeah, monitoring corals is really important because it's the ecosystem it's a very delicate ecosystem. Sorry, so everything relies on one another. Corals are housing to a lot of marine animals. They're also food. A lot of, especially parrotfish, they eat a lot of the algae that are on the corals and they graze, which create our sand. And then also they act as borders for when there's storms. So one of the biggest things that they do is they protect the land from big wave surges. So if there's a typhoon or superstorm or even a tsunami that comes, as those waves roll across the ocean, there's nothing stopping it. So it's like a ball rolling downhill, right? It's just going to keep picking up speed more and more as it goes. But when there's things that are in its way blocking it, it starts to break up the pressure and the force of that wave, so that when it comes towards land, it's not as impactful. Whereas if we didn't even have the reef, or we had a bad reef that the corals were dying out and not strong enough to protect against, then those waves would come and hit land more forcefully, and that puts especially communities that are close to the shore, which is all of us, at big risk. Like we already know that with king tides happening around Palau, the roads are getting flooded, right? So those people staying on shore, by the shore, are getting impacted. But imagine if that was just a big wave that came in, that would cause a lot of damage. So healthy corals are both for the ecosystem, that helps the food chain. There's a lot of different organisms that live and depend on it. And we depend on all of these organisms, such as fish and crabs and salmon. And then they also protect us. So those are just a couple of things that make them super important for us. Not to mention, they're one of our main attractions to Palau. Besides our culture and all of the things that we can offer on land, the ocean is a big tourism attraction to especially divers around the world. So if we don't have that, then we lose that for Palau's economic growth.
And I guess the importance of monitoring is just so we know, it's sort of like an indicator of, hey, things are changing, things are not normal, So that's why we need to do a regular monitoring on coral reefs, eh?
Yeah, so we monitor them, and then we can also provide helpful feedback to the national government, to the state governments, to the communities on how we can do our best to preserve these resources. And then also research efforts, which Dan will go into, that Aquarium is doing on restoration, restoring these after traumatic events.
And speaking of restoration, I would like to ask Dan to, can you just share with us and our audience a little bit about the coral restoration?
Yeah, of course, I'd be happy to. First off, good morning. Thanks for having me on the show. Very happy to be here. And I'll just be explaining a little bit about what I've been up to lately in regards to coral restoration training. So I guess the first thing to clear up is, what is coral restoration? We're specifically referring to active coral reef restoration, and what that means is artificially changing the reef structure, either by introducing some shape or introducing some new function to the reef that it might not have had beforehand. So, yeah, go for it.
Dali lang mo ko lasing ilanggal dan mga katmakaluro aquarium agi wala focus at tayo del gukto ko coral restoration. Hindi era the borsay halid di kulturo ko mo sa sel tol mo do elay gelolgo dalil. Tial to coral restoration sel sugong mutamal la kargere gibo morusil da assessment sel ngari adra blue state lo say tial garere mama ko radim la maday kal marandri ako tulurol gi mot mo kuni amo magyo mesni agimo magimesan momrek gora amalas mo la say ngaram lo ul mom lo ay say yel da sen ko background information ongerung aro akut mok lam gegre lom subul gor omes la say ngwara sel natural recovery sel sugum tial gerera miltamal rayolt kame hal omu ul gora ore del mo otralol gi sni lo la ba ngaramarang ko gor omes sel natural recovery say tian seb el dingi maksum sel dingi ndakdo goraringi ndi elang ari bebira kargerel matamal momla akmedel ngarador so goderak إذا على الموت الموايسرة أسمير رانغرامو Ela igida igel lolgo dalelo asay. Agi mo malas mulmotmu egora amalas mulasay. Magara adolgi setial el marande. Dikluto la imortol asay. Sel do restoration. To spera to restoration. Yang akablo saklo spera to asay rehabilitation. Lenda kana didul mulut ko si sito di sel do restoration adab lo se okay tial gerger la sel bel restoring moas me erairar ndia kan dia lo rol waisi mal dia se edel ko do ram lo restaurant waisel me erairar magada mo malas mo introduce ay gidul ko rasi qodolgi sitat mal rela sei nsebel mut el gora mukmed el waingira ngaramol ngaria abtol marando mo mosel buto kangi gilmei ay kita qadim na sual do el girela dalle lenga gidel mo la sei atora restoration kadam sang o mesra sei ngaral gora treta la sebe de los peringil gora malas mo lgi setial gergel.
Thanks for clearing that up, Asap. I think you might have mentioned it just then, but just one thing to clarify is that reefs can be subject to a variety of different damages. Some of those are avoidable, like land-based pollution, human activities, so on. But some are simply unavoidable, like cyclones or heat waves causing coral bleaching. So the trick is, I mean, these problems are coming for reefs either way we look at it. The trick is finding out which ones are likely to recover on their own and which ones might need a helping hand.
Oy, mulgo dalil wase mutol talama lamera garger. Sebel tora pura gale magikyong pollution ma sebel tora wa sesliol ta typhoon sebel tora wa muto gel longar mal uben gora telmal sel du mera garger ma segid el lolgoria dalele el wase mesel bol wa segid engira mal mo magim sang egor o mesel sei ngara awungil teletal do speri e malas mulgut maklital reef el gor olgi setal mlam tamal el garger.
Great. Okay, so I'll just report on the training which I've just returned from. So I was visiting a group called the Mars Assisted Reef Restoration, and they've developed this system called the Mars Reef Star. And what the Mars Reef Star is, it's essentially a hexagonal shaped piece of rebar coated in fiberglass resin and sand, and they're hexagonal so that they can all lock together like a tiled flooring and build a web and essentially build a new reef.
Okay. Anggal dalela ngaria training na Indonesia leblori il training leblori atirgel adal tial gombali Mars tial mru legal mergos el gal ro chocolate seguid el gombali Mars aulum aurora Indonesia ogore sera tris ogora Aquarium la bolomesa segame de dolas melom laure de algor omesa aigel legal salmal IKELAU do de bay gora sisbele laudo le gom de sel me gobit Aquarium mal de la ladren la sentir mal di los anyway como en el momento se sendim la alguien mencionaría ma sentir am omesa segame de do siga aigel bebir aurol se el motmok la gargera bloda o sistema de gora sebel sisbele laudo mesaygi del gibom da segame bodo las mrut tay de gora tora restoration agim lo sigi lo sei magrad restore amran den gatangamel magi gora ul mesaygal website maral mol mom tigir tay del el website ra adra mars mata el gora mal lungile mal successful a Indonesia gora walungil lo Indonesia ngegi dadan lo aisa setia basically taking the tuk medel ngara. That's about half a meter.
Yeah.
Medel ngara te el meter ngara 1 to 2 feet tengel. Hexagon tial gora kalol mapkul, kalol masay dringil shape. Magidu di segid o yatlong klela ngara medel talsak. Magidu di segid lo seng star, Mars star. Egore il tira igale every cinema al all mal mili misal bol mdare tia teking al sel di tia blulra al all el celul das behind the scenes amranda nsel momreg dradel din take a long time en disel sugum gora momreg dra something gora al all en wal gora set tia bulwak gora ngari segidin mung wal mreg start lo mreg drin. Anyway, me la que usted seguir el style el magi seguida que me tici el style. Ya que lo último mes seguir el website tire construct igual. Hindi segid ngari igel cigarette ra bekkel gora kumbali ma invention ngari igel gora bertedi. Tamallo aigal wal aklel watsume ngari matetela doruni magiruli. Motra try out nira urera marangara de sia ngara damle request ma gora malas mulgi sira tara igel el malgasok ra amadala bulu. Magimle magi ilti lim lagi ngarsel maral tetelen magi ngulmo edwal mamrand mungil mundub aigal marand. Hindi gimlutan molding ringi egel goram le iltela wal goram la bipkop mo ko dia mes tel tekking hindi gal maranda mla mo maklo ya gibo morrek da bebira maranda samha mla mo brek de tiat gora eru rakam la mo hindi bebira maranda dir ge goram di daitel ndi gal sal sebela maranda dobal mo brek dir yakbong rakle ra bertak le dole tri edilo udigleng egel gora wal udela meudul mo brek. Anyway, komeng lukman lamo ko komangal mulgora da dial ak mulgor seigi dilen dial nang seam lo ul madal air adramar sa sendia o magi communicate trobentri eto sei bay ngaria ko rak training il morinite bal se elem sendra tro admil mei mobodo lo dongegel bekel gora agel maral trangtingil matte telel tial lo meo baygal ma dalia lamlo sebel mo mora tay Indonesian Mercy training melak mom sa teal mum mutte molmol tial training la blani kabo dalia.
We decided to use the Mars system as it's the largest scale reef restoration initiative in the world. They've been putting reef stars in the water since 2011, and to date they've put in over 90,000 reef stars, which cover an area over 100,000 square meters. So we were lucky enough to be offered a training, official training, in the biggest build site, Palau Bontasua Island, in the Spermond Archipelago in South Sulawesi. And during this week-long training session, we were involved in the collection of coral fragments and the outplanting of 100 reef stars.
Oh, ya dale lo ay sa tertril blorngi. Ngo ay sa sel was sa tayil ko Bali. They did that in 2009. Forgot.
2011.
2011 na tayil del Mars. Amlo start mru lagay the stars se malal mamrandra Indonesia. Mel mutrel al time. Etamlado alma ogtul telal 90,000 reef stars. Ablal dal memlelo ka Indonesia, and I believe they have some site not only in Indonesia but
just to clarify, the 90,000 is worldwide across all of their sites.
Agelo tiltela la worldwide. Letrigal Mars angaria bebira site tilngara. You have some of the countries that Mars are also.
Yep, there's Kenya, the Maldives, Australia.
Oh, ngaria Kenya blue Africa direct Mars ororingi. Ngaria Maldives blue mera South Indian Ocean. Ngaria blue Australia. Of course Indonesia. Okay, continue on.
Thanks. Yep. So the thing that made this all possible, in my opinion, was the sheer level of community engagement. For example, there were over 100 locals from Bontasua Island which came to help with the coral tying on, and it was very eye-opening to realize that to do something at that scale, you need that level of community engagement and support.
Oh, ay sa dalilo say Sir Albertel to Indonesia. Ul mo kloluro ending sibil dital derul sande to wal mahmal betol brand. Tirgel adra gara gel community gel gora ablu loro niya arwadalel. So let me just clarify this before I tell our audience. So you went to the Indonesia and then you fly to some remote island. Is that where the
it's just off Makassar. It's a small boat ride from one of the big cities in Sulawesi.
Temlot tial klon matra Indonesia. Ego ngara abilas mo try gel gegrel lions. Ilsegi da ngania urur. Masaral botul mo ba gagi the stars. Ngagi dro esa sei. Ul mong sibil gut maklak urur. Seral bong tial bulu. Tiarogil bulu atto del meleng sew. Leng temadengek mada don ngosem bol lungil amaran deng mo wira tira rola to o monged maramo. Ngwadi sakal duli sei gidleng sa gi motromo lagi moral me lak na mo sa setial to registration kloluror al makasal ad mga tmokuni ang kasama dalma ya al butog al adam tmokuni ang butog am dalma. Can we wait for the okay ako continue. I think that's a colors but we want to finish before we start.
Just one thing to add, the method itself was developed due to the high prevalence of blast fishing in the area. So you're you're essentially just left with a complete rubble flat, so no hard substrate at all. And this method was selected in order to offer some stable surface for corals to grow.
Why say ulma tegi del mas samlo spet tegi del medo. Kada mo marwa Indonesia ngaramo adi wala badu bul ngar omngit. Magegi del gegrel bulu. Ay gal gergerinya di gia kora ma maklul merandel dalal ma ndi rubble ndi nglama ma gal merandel mo kora baras ma al ol rtial bertakle. Mung dia wudi rtial bertakle mendal sewela gisela merandel rubble abor robor bringe lende wudi rtial bertakle. Aul tolos per til star sasem el se del mong dollar ma gel fragment e o sisil time sel model rtial star e sel e ngela model al salo wudi el mol dingil mol mensment. السيد المسمن تنيا لامو ساليد يا Is that a call? Okay, let's just take that call in.
Caller on the air.
Oy, malungil tuta, di ako na kami malungil na program. Malungil tutan mara wave. Malungil ko daw rin sa molmong ending labay yung sel di molyu that kingit tigal adrang bar exactly the same what they said like telguk pom tu akle bom ibiok leng mga kadamor ovaries sel dil du igel lolgoem dung kadamor ngil follow up per mga leng so ad loreng saigal tokoil molgoy ending kaul ko kolyo ida ko maloyo ida mo extreme mangabay mo soro mitititirgal adrang bardam tam moigel ko klol ko imsel ko polteme me ko moigel o samal malokoy abang sulang
Yeah, was a malmsala caller. She's right. I kinda go a bit more than what you mentioned. When I translate, so she said, "Hey, just try to translate whatever." Sulang e caller. Oy, akmo malas malway sayid. Oy, sulang e caller. Okay, you may continue.
And I suppose the last thing to touch on is how it's going to tie into the work that we're doing here in the aquarium. So we're interested in using the Mars reef stars as a tool to outplant our selectively heat-resistant corals. So what that means is there's a collaborative project currently between PICRC, the Nature Conservancy, and Stanford Center for Ocean Solutions, and they've developed a heat stress regime where we can select for heat-tolerant corals and use those for outplanting.
Oy, may lasarabol mo na training daler Indonesia may mam sel mlugut mok lagi del stars ngar sel maral tritelele. May lagi del stars gibla ngal argarada. Ay gi mo la ma amrandringi hindi elang ko kariya tarawro lo bangela. Tarawro lo bangela TNC, Atal Nature Conservancy, masel Stanford University. Lola baigal marandel me test. Agi mo fragment regal marandel me coral reef, ore test lo siglo sengaral marandam sisira klal de maram itut. Ela gi giblam test mo regal maranda. Magina mo dek mora sisira klal maram itut. Ay gi mo la bol mo gi del stars giblam dal mara gararda. Liga gi del stars amgat mo kol ngar sel maral tetelele mal wel coated marogui. Agi mo la ba gi del brand mo malal bringil gararda.
Perfect. I think you covered it all. 8:50.
Oh, okay. So, can you just tell us a bit about the training? I bet you not only learn about the reef stars, but also there's some other alternative way of like selecting the site or other method of attaching corals to the...
Yeah, of course. I'm glad you brought that up, actually. I've learned a lot in terms of assessing the recovery potential of a reef, finding out if it would be a good candidate in the first place for coral restoration. Beyond that, we also explored a few different methods. We were trained in something called the coral clip method, which is essentially just a big stone masonry nail with a spring. So you hammer it into the reef and the spring holds the fragment in place until it attaches naturally.
Oh, may selva training dalle tidiregal mo algira lagay the reef stars. Tidiregal mo involve by gel kasi magarado ko ra amalil traset tiagi da ngil bornya restoration. Tidiregal ngari atara method do sing coral clip. Tiago kora klol del ngari kora clip ngari. Magadit melil molmo breka dra ba. Akora klol ba dang sisi il bertak. ore edi migeli tial clip wa amrandel mong clipa ore gadrigi mundi ngasegi de molto da gel ludel el midil guk matar amrandel.
Caller on the air.
Oi, malungin 2,000 more kami ang alaway video. Asap malungin 2,000 ako kau mengilan batner kau. Malungin la traksyo merik piskami tian lubas. Krisur ngala internet mes. El aigel lula sing kami wa merura kora registration ser domes será marine biologist la Florida. Yang mesti ABS luldas. Kami eksperimen termataya Marial loro ravao. Mesel wasi amran sebel muktub ABS kelengar ravao beransil. Melodia kan sebel pililuton mo malataya. Rali tirga saintis tergusau nanti. Ma askogil nila loro Marial dan el milas wasi anda pangalo ravao dengan ABL dingin. Dua kelengar ni. El ansil sa ulakon. Marine biologist sa Florida elak. Omeo basmen replace sa goral mayel balan teman lara sila daw. For example, gid other bela tay kun kayan. Agire del morulia wati agire mera blur belaw. Mangi kala moringi ablil. Edingil bum amran draigal. Ulak melgot yang akmula sa internet sa Florida maulak ngala ere menungorgi. Kevermulasmen terkuat tele laban malwalo blo aravao veiga mobli langi kle dingi du amran dengi nguk mere ver omom goro rangi seda amran den amran moklo jadi kami temoy de gorngil ale scientist mom kadmo bergel wasik gil adre bela di ko besta internet otto bada aul vasu wasen sebe de mura silbe laudia sulang me igama next program ro.
I say, what he was saying is right. That's another method. Remember that presentation we had with anyway, he was saying, in Florida, some scientists are building like a massive, sort of like a big boat, but hollow inside concrete. Yeah. And just place them there, and then eventually the corals, which is, that's another method. Yeah, yeah. And so he was just saying, maybe we can apply those kind of method here. So anyway, hale di bok te la getting la color el al time en wagel gulo gora walel kadi agidir gul mu tel to restoration ma we open to all sort of magidir kal explore agel gagros method le seguir gulo gora walel wasay amranda gagrosa ndal sebel di el all e amranda el serel el oral moklo le mranda ang isel amranda o spera solid substrate o spera msisi el madare el bol bregdrin en madengek mo segit sel malonga siring mal ngi sela marand ding mo dia setiak ponin sebegel survival uben dia leng dia kan ample bele la li anyway mesay kita tetele ma malmol molosiga gi del bekal dulel aul ma gingil titti gi del rips star mospering rad sel melga sokra rad el all it's a loose substrate so it ngungil al boray gay del gora enya goler amal masaul ela seguid el método lo ya goler as el guk for example kadra uspering regel gora awal mesisi abru sringil area letial concrete obrad mesin mun ere ndiaro lele lolitay ngagro anyway masaul goler digu ay say agimel mon explore regel gagro el gora tetelela restoration rasengral método ngil morangara mangal método ngil marang agimel mon gen kuling Tialto ramra restoration adora al mong moral mokluluror mugire lungina bodo denge bitokol gagrosel. So I was just so that was the caller. Talking about that other method, build a big which is very nice. I'm glad he mentioned that. And do you have also you are done with whatever you were trying to say?
Yeah, that's it.
So I guess let me just try to sum up what both of you guys were just saying this morning. I guess monitoring and restoration are crucial for our coral reef monitoring and restoration. It's important for our marine ecosystem. Also, for a long-term survival of coral reef. So we wanted to. With that, I wanted to continue to encourage the listeners about let's help. Let's be aware and try to continue to protect these coral reefs, because they're important to our not only our ecosystem but also our livelihood. Yep, exactly. And so maklog tutela lamran del gire la tial debela bolwad klog tutela el bodo o gora am subul momdu la sei mal ngaria gora atal mal malu ngral el soal mutmalagal marand engrawa rala ungil dogi ungil gora malasmel mutmok min dial mutmal السيد اللي لغوني يقلاو ونقلا لغورا بيفا مال وال مونيتور غانيا سكيتشرين بكرا لو الغوك توب دي غارا ارتم يقرا برو بلا لو مسا قال مران لا سغورا كونديشنين لغلا مي لغوك مو لسيد المونيتورين سيل سغوم موديا ضروري ان جال سيد الموم دي سي علي تيام تملو مالو بتيا غورا تتلا سسمير غير المونيتور مسل ده سنسا غورا متملو ما اسسمير اغدمري الترال ادريس ايجي len dia kana sel blal matamal la yang wal gora marang la abodong utmok la gama malmol mal arwa eblina adra monitoring gama mal gukar aquarium malmol mal gilet tal togora augi sel gel gora mlamad el miranda magi motmal tablol el timra gora center continue agi malmol mal مرو لقال لورور أوسي جاي الورا سئل مغسوجي دم كذا سب أكليتال غرقنا بالوضع ما قد ورا مرمرة ولا بورا برنامج رجيد مالو إلى تيمد تيد معي تيو مالسو من ورا دياغا do you guys want to say like final word before we close? Looks like we're right on time.
It's okay with me?
You're all set?
Yep.
So in that case, I will close the program. Madako mal masaul mlosimil tunin orange di klut lam klat kasi amok tel shorgi dra Brussels ice di mem godo ice gel gor activity center lengora ngari sel tola sa center aklok ada belau bungila ada belau ngira seng tigat mok lang ramarang sia mal gora aklol mok tel mera bek el chister sel pede lui ge ko ice gel gora amayang al ice el center mok sel time madatsu ma chego mal again go mal lomsaul tunin orange tel radio shorgi ya boleh dia syurgi tadi meritiang yang musim masel melbel sel